So, sticking on that elections have consequences theme, let's discuss these new revelations with Roe v. Wade and the Supreme Court. So, before I get into what kind of hit the news waves yesterday evening, I want to start with the background so we can really get a good understanding here of what's occurring. Because, as usual, I have had to just stay off social media today. I just cannot take all of it. The one thing I did see on Twitter before I decided it was time to get off until people kind of maybe calm down, which I know it's probably not the most sensitive thing to say. Anyways, but there was a good tweet. I forget who it was from, but it said the irony of all this. Let me pull it up if I can find it here really quick, because I think it would be good to read it here. I took a screenshot of it. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. It says, the juxtaposition of the Met Gala images with the new news of the demise of Roe v. Wade has a true band playing on the deck of the Titanic vibe. I was kind of thinking that too, because as I was going to bed last night and saw all the Roe v. Wade news and then saw the juxtaposition with the Met Gala, I'm like, oh, this is very late-stage capitalism, very late-stage democracy. Like, things are not looking great, basically. You know, you have Bella Hadid or whatever her name is wearing some crazy dress, and then you just mix that with the idea of maybe half the country not having abortion rights anymore. So, anyways, basically the case that is at the center of this current hearing that is happening in Mississippi is known as Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. And basically the Supreme Court has been holding hearings on this for quite some time now. And from what I've gathered, all the way back in 2018, Mississippi passed a law called the Gestational Age Act. Really flows off the tongue, but it prohibited all abortions with few exceptions after 15 weeks. And Roe v. Wade, I think, had set that viability at 24 weeks. I guess that's when they've distinguished it being technically a life. Again, it gets very complicated. I'm not going to go down that in this episode. But so 24 weeks is the established viability. And so this Mississippi one was saying no abortions after 15 weeks except for very extreme circumstances. And this organization called the Jackson Women's Health Organization, which, by the way, was the only licensed abortion facility in Mississippi, challenged the law and requested there was an emergency temporary restraining order on it. And after this, and do remember, I'm not a legal expert, I'm just trying to get you the best from my research here, is they found that the state had not provided evidence that a fetus would be viable at 15 weeks. And as I say, the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade precedent, prohibits states from banning abortions prior to viability, which was set at 24 weeks. So the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit affirmed this, and it looked like this was going away. But now this has been brought up to the attention of the Supreme Court. And if it's overturned, it would mean that Roe v. Wade would not hold up as it currently stands due to that 24 weeks established viability. And now, since then, we've seen other states put in pending bills that kind of mirror this Mississippi law. So it kind of looks like they're just waiting this out to see what happens with Mississippi. So basically, if this Mississippi case is overturned, we could just see a cascade across a lot of states. And then you also have the Texas one, which I'll talk a little bit about later, which is kind of incentivizing vigilantism. That is also going to be reviewed by the Supreme Court soon. So we have a lot of not great things happening. Now, something else that I think should be mentioned is that, I already got to this. Kind of. So according to a CNN article, in quotes here, legislatures in 13 states have passed so-called trigger laws, and they're bans designed to go into effect if Roe is overturned. And some of these, I guess, require, as of now, an attorney general to certify that Roe has been struck down before the law can take effect. So I guess you can see, because like some people say, oh, this is just Mississippi, it's just about a state. It's like basically at least 13 states, and I would argue probably more, are just waiting to see what happens here because they will follow suit. They will follow suit. There is no doubt in my mind that they will. So this basically catches us up to where we're at. There are early signs that the Supreme Court is going to overturn Roe as it currently stands, and it's going to become a states' rights issue. And it's going to lead to a strange country, in my opinion, where abortion is not ubiquitous. It's not legal in every state, and blue states, uphold the same services, and red states have cut them. It's going to, in a macro sense, be awful for women's health, awful for inequality, and just awful for the cohesiveness of our country, because now we're going to have certain states with completely different views on abortion, which we already do, but at least we had a legal precedent. So it's not great. And, again, like I've said, it's obvious that this would happen. You have Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, who signaled that they were fine in some ways with trying to overturn this, right, or overruling Roe. And the conservatives have a majority now. Remember, elections have consequences, and here we are. So now that we're caught up, since February, I think it was mid to late February, there's a leaked initial draft, which is the majority opinion, and it was written by Justice Samuel Alito, who was, I believe, nominated during George W. Bush. And side note, he's always kind of seemed like a dick to me. He's, like, even in this, in this leaked majority opinion, which I skimmed through, it was 98 pages. I don't need that in my life, but he's kind of condescending, tries to be ironic. I don't know. I've never really liked the guy. I really don't like the guy. I'm fine with Neil Gorsuch and Justice Roberts. Neil Gorsuch is fairly libertarian on a lot of issues, and I lean that way as well. So I've always had no issues with Gorsuch, Roberts, but Alito gives me bad vibes, and Coney Barrett for different reasons as well. But anyways, so basically this has been circulating around, this leaked majority opinion written by Samuel Alito, and Politico obtained it and has confirmed that it's real. Like I said, I've skimmed all of it, and it doesn't seem like there's a reason for it not to be real. It looks fairly authentic. It's been validated by Politico, so we'll just go on the tense that it's real. And based on what we've been told, based on what I've been reading, again, there's no reason to think it's not. So I do think it's strange it's been leaked, because Politico even notes in their article on this, they say that no draft decision in the modern history of the court has been disclosed publicly while a case is still pending. So that is interesting on its own. So I do wonder why it's been released, what the intention is, yada, yada, yada. But anyways, in the leaked document, Alito basically discusses how, in quotes, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." And these words are interesting because I think up until this, I think there was maybe some hope that it wouldn't just happen so fast. A lot of legal experts on the right and the left, I think, argued that the court would slowly kind of chip away or pick away at abortion rights without just going full axe to it. And this shows that, things might be accelerating more than we thought. Again, you're going to hate me by the end of this episode. Elections have consequences, and we are seeing that in real time. Something interesting about this is that the court is looking at other decisions in which precedents have been overturned, and I'm a little unsure if they're using this as reasoning or as kind of a basis, but the cases they're using are quite extreme, and I'll elaborate here. So in an opinion in 2020, Brett Kavanaugh labeled two well-known Supreme Court decisions egregiously wrong when decided. And these are two very different cases, but fascinating cases. It was the 1944 ruling called Korematsu versus the United States, and it basically upheld the detention of Japanese Americans during World War II. Habeas corpus related, very controversial. And by the way, it's never been overturned. So I don't know why they actually brought this one into it. But the other decision was Plessy v. Ferguson, which was the 1896 decision, to refresh your memories, that basically allowed segregation, saying that people were separate but equal, right? That's that famous separate but equal case, Plessy v. Ferguson. And, I agree with Brett Kavanaugh. That was egregiously wrong when decided. But I think they're trying to compare its overturn with the idea of overturning Roe v. Wade. And Basically, this egregiously wrong when decided concept is implying that allowing states to outlaw abortion is similar to ending legal racial segregation. It's really strange. I think it's overblown, and I don't think it's correct. Abortion and separation of people by skin color, I do not see any similarity there. Please tweet at me if I'm wrong, but I don't see that. So it's interesting logic, but it's also, again, opening up the door for other things to be overturned. Either way, you know, I think it needs to be made clear that it's not like it's not going to ban abortion, but it's going to give states more wiggle room with how they handle abortion. Basically, any state can still allow the procedure, and I imagine that a majority or all of blue states will. But it means that states like Mississippi can basically prohibit abortion, or in the case of Texas, if that one gets upheld, then they can also, private citizens can sue medical providers or abortion clinics, etc. So it really creates a very strange system, a very strange system of vigilantism. And again, like I've said, and I don't think it's any secret, is that all of this will make abortion less accessible to the most vulnerable especially, and it's going to lead to pain, suffering, health issues, and illegal abortions. And I don't want to go into detail, but I'm sure most of you know how people used to do abortions if they were desperate. And it was not good. It ended in death. And there's already been some cases in Texas where there was a woman who was arrested for doing that. And real quick, I want to read a section from an article from the New Yorker from back on April 25th. It talks about what could be next if this current logic holds up and Roe is overturned in its current state. It says here in quotes, various Republican senators have questioned Griswold versus Connecticut, which struck down a state ban on contraceptives, Obergefell versus Hodges, which requires states to recognize same-sex marriage, and even Loving v. Virginia, which invalidated state anti-miscegenation laws. And all of these, I think, are crucial with equal access, human rights. I mean, if you have questions about now overturning gay marriage, contraceptives, interracial marriage, just because of the idea of states' rights, that's not what more libertarian-leaning people like me think about when we think about states' rights. I just want to make that very clear. There's something called the harm principle, right? Like, nothing should be illegal unless it starts harming others. Like, that's why a lot of libertarians are for legalizing drugs. Like, as long as you're not harming others, you should be able to harm yourself, basically. And bills like this, like overturning legalization of gay marriage, overturning Roe v. Wade, it's not like it's just Justice Alito now. It's his decision and the others impacting millions and millions of people. That is in direct, in my opinion, conflict with the harm principle and what true libertarians would say about not making the state decide this, because we are seeing the state now decide this in some ways. And this leads me to kind of my closing thoughts, at least on this segment for now. And I'm sure this will come up more, believe me. It's probably not over. But I am for creating a culture of pro-life in the United States. I think of course that's where everyone wants to go. I don't think anyone's loved abortions, and I've said this multiple times. But in order to do that, we would need to solve inequality in the United States. We would need to give people more access to contraceptives, sexual education, better health care, less racism, less structural issues. That's how you create a culture of life, not by cutting everything. That's not going to lead to it. That's just going to lead to dangerous abortions and women being forced to have children they cannot have. You know, it's so cliche to say at this point, but it seems like a lot of these fundamentalists are for protecting the life of a child until they're born. And then, obviously, we cut state spending, we cut Medicaid programs, adoption agencies are horrendous from what I've read. Like, this is not creating a culture of pro-life. And it sickens me because it shows how extreme this side is. I also wonder what this does to the midterms. That's something else I really think hard about. Because, you know, everyone talks about how it's going to be a bloodbath for Democrats, and it probably will be. But I kind of wonder what this does to the average American, right? If Roe v. Wade were to be overturned. Because I don't think most Americans have strong opinions on abortion. The majority of Americans, I don't think, love abortion, but also don't think that there should be access to it. And if this is overturned, what does this do to like moderate suburban America? Does this almost serve as a wedge issue to get people out to vote against Republicans? It might be too late for that, to be honest. It really might be, because the Democrats have struggled so hard over the last year or two. But I also think at the same time is that if you're Republicans, I don't really know if you want this to happen right now, because I know a lot of Republicans who aren't like everyone should get an abortion, but they also believe that it should be an option. And so I think this is what happens when the crazy fundamentalists are driving the truck. So we'll see. And the last thing I'll say here is that the court is really losing legitimacy in my eyes. Actually, when Roe v. Wade happened, which I didn't even know about until I was reading up on this, is that there were a lot of Republicans who sided in this decision. Nixon's appointed justice was the one who wrote the decision. Nixon. Now it seems like the court is just all about cultural approval and support from the political side. Like it seems like the Supreme Court is exactly the opposite of what it should have been, right? We always thought the Supreme Court was this independent body that wasn't involved by the wills of the people as much. It actually helped decide what was legal. It seems to me like it's now become more of an advocate. And both sides are guilty of this, don't get me wrong. But in this case, the court just has lost its legitimacy. They're also going to be looking into this SB 8 in Texas, which is banning abortions roughly from the 6th week of pregnancy. That's the vigilante one. The Supreme Court looking at that. Then you have concealed carry handgun laws in New York that they're looking at. It just seems like it's all culture issues again. And, I don't really know where we go from here. It seems like the Supreme Court was our last branch that seemed to be somewhat legitimate, or at least separated from the chaos we've seen in the executive and the legislative branches. But the rot has continued, right? And it seems like it's spread to the Supreme Court as well. So I'm not at all happy to see that.